Hey, Kevin Lawrence here. Today I'm super excited for this interview. I've been looking forward to it for a while. Ajit Prabhu is the co-founder and CEO of Quest Global, and you may or may not have heard of them. If you're in the aerospace and the engineering space, you will have. But they're a global engineering services firm, and they provide end-to-end solutions across all kinds of industry verticals. And under his mission-centric leadership, the company has grown from two people to over 20,000, as he says, extraordinary employees. And it's a market leader dedicated to engineering a brighter future for all. He believes in fostering a culture of continuous learning, resilience, and excellence. And that's the key to making Quest Global a trusted industry partner, solving the world's toughest engineering challenges. And he's got all kinds of awards, including the Thai Global Entrepreneur in 2017, Ernst& Young Entrepreneur of the Year, and SICCI Outstanding Entrepreneur of the Year, both in 2014. And like most of the great CEOs that we know and get to work with, he's a staunch believer in the power of education. He holds a BSc in mechanical engineering from Karnataka, I can probably pronounce that wrong, university, two MS degrees, one in mechanical engineering from Old Dominion University, and one in biomedical engineering from RPI in Troy, New York. And he's also a certified Lean Six Sigma Green Belt. And when he's not working and building a great company, he's involved in community service and underwater. He loves scuba and spending time in his Japanese garden with his family. So, Ajit, thank you for being here today, and super excited to share your story of what you've done in Quest Global. Now we first met back when I was interviewing you for the Scaling Up book, um, more than a decade ago. And then you joined us on one of the Jim Collins study tours with a group of CEOs in Jim's lab in Boulder, which I know was very impactful for you. And then recently you shared with me that you'd crossed this magic billion dollar of revenue mark, which is a goal that you had. And you shared it with me. And I was very excited and congratulating you and saying we should share this story. And that's kind of what we're doing here today, is going to share your story of your journey of growth, which is going to continue still. So again, thank you very much for being here today.
Okay. Well, great to be here with you, Kevin. Actually, I'm humbled by this opportunity to be able to share the journey as well as the learnings, that hopefully helps anybody else who want to be in the same path they want to pursue.
Yeah. Well, that's the idea for sure. So where are you today for the people watching? I'm here in Vancouver, BC, and you are today?
I am in Western Connecticut on the other side. So I'm here. This is my home when I come to the States. And tomorrow my second daughter is graduating from NYU.
Ooh, exciting.
So I'm here for attending her graduation ceremony. And then over the weekend, I fly back to Singapore.
Awesome. That's a great city too.
Yeah.
So tell us, if you could put in your own terms what Quest does, and I know it's engineering services, but if you could break it down to people who may not be in the industry and familiar, if you could share.
Yeah. So the world that we get to experience as it is, it happens due to amazing high technology products that are put out there in the world by many technology companies, right? So power generation equipments, aircraft engines, airplanes, locomotives, automotive cars, medical products. So these are all highly engineered products, and companies who produce these products, they employ a whole lot of engineers to develop them. So we work with those engineers to solve some of the toughest engineering problems that stand in the way of creating those products that make our lives happen.
So in layman's terms, in layman's terms, it's these companies have these major engineering things they're trying to figure out, and they bring you on board to help them solve some of these challenges they want to when they're building these great products.
That's right. Yeah. Oftentimes, when companies have to solve these problems, they need a massive number of engineers.
Yeah.
They need new technologies, and we help them because we have ability to support clients across different technology segments. So we have competencies available readily that we can bring to their table. That's what makes our business.
Awesome. So let's go back to the start. And I want to, by the way, I'm gonna just share this slide that you shared with me. which is about, again, crossing $1 billion of revenue. Some rare life events, admission to Harvard, climbing Everest, getting a speeding ticket in the US. I have a couple of those. Living beyond 100 years, which I hope to be able to. That's my aspiration. But I just love how you put that, is that these rare life events, and then building $1 billion company is in that, and even more rare than those rarest life events that we think about. And it was a great way to put it.
Yeah. So yeah, I'd come across that statistics, while reading the books about, like how to build a generational companies that last very long, right? I've been always fascinated with businesses and companies which have survived for hundreds of years.
Me too.
And I came across some statistics, which said that, only 4 in 10,000 companies that get started ever become $1 billion in revenue. And so I was always wondering about it, why is it so rare? Because many people have aspirations to build large scale companies, but so what are the reasons, what it may be,
what did you land on? What did you land now in your mind, with your experience having done it, looking back? What do you think makes the difference? We know it's rare because it's hard, but what's your learning, your perspective around that?
Well, recently we had our first $1 billion business board meeting. So in that, we took some time to reflect.
I love it.
28 years of journey. And I think like 3 things that I could, say, if I have to boil it down to a few, is that first is the order of thinking matters a lot. If you want to build a generational company, you have to look that far out and then ask the question, what are the systems that we have to build that allows us to keep adapting and changing over time? And the world doesn't remain the same, right? So we don't come across situations which are always healthy situations. The business is not, it's like a very complex thing. So how do you build a learning system, self-adapting system that can change with the time being governed?
I like it.
Is one. Okay. Second one is like ability to stay through the tough times, staying course, and you do come across situations, like in our life cycle, we came across 2 situations. One was the Enron bubble. At that time, the company was about $20 million size. Our only client at that time, General Electric, was they were our significant client. About 80% of our business came from GE at that time.
Oh, okay.
And so how do you stay through that, tough times? And then the COVID is another significant event, So how do you stay through those times? It requires a lot of resolve. Leadership has to be at its best in the worst of times. And I also absolutely believe that those crisis moments are a good time to reflect and to renew your, passions and everything. So I think that's a second element, I would say, like staying through that, Yeah. And the third one is, as I said, you have to think in systems, how can you build a system that can perpetuate itself? Not just about like you running the business when you are there,
That would be like Jim Collins's clock building, not time telling.
Absolutely. It absolutely. Right. Yeah.
So would you see yourself as a clock builder? Does that resonate with you?
I think so. I think like all my leadership team, I'm expecting them also to be the same.
Of course.
Building clocks,
Yeah. I love that distinction because it is systematic. To get that kind of scale, there has to be system, but you also said adaptability. It can't be just a locked system. Otherwise you become bureaucracy. That's but right, it's the adaptability is key within that, which is what's your thoughts on how do you create adaptability within systems?
I think again, Jim talks about it, right? So like fire bullets before cannonballs, ability to experiment, the thought without, having associating the failure, shame and associated with it, failures, you take it as a means of learning. But then what you don't do is to take big bets, which radically changes everything. And but like the incremental approach of, hey, let's experiment first, let's get the bearings right, and then you kind of, go in a big way. And we
Yeah.
have done that, so the systems that I'm talking about that we had to build was all about, how to scale an account as a company, so that was
Mm,
became like a primary learning. And the second one was like, how do you acquire and integrate businesses successfully in the organization, how to run a P&L. I mean, these are the
yeah.
basic
Yeah.
building blocks, then you have to pass on all of that through the second and the third
To the
generation
next.
of leaders
Yes. Yes.
so that they can operate all those systems, So yeah, I think like building the clock that allows you to perpetually run, I think what makes a long-term company happen.
That makes a lot. I like that. I like the way you've integrated that thinking.
Yeah.
So how did it start? How did it start going back? Is it, the origin story, and then, and we'll talk about your initial, what was your first big aspiration?
Yeah. Well, Kevin, I mean, like I came to the country with $60 in my pocket,
You,
So,
you did, yeah. I love it.
so all my education was funded by my professors through teaching assistantship and research assistant,
Really?
everything. Yeah. And 2 years into the country, like
And into the country, you're talking about into the US, right?
United
Yeah.
States, yeah, to
Yeah,
the
yeah,
US.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So my parents expressed an interest to come and visit me. And then I didn't have enough money to buy them a plane ticket. So I needed an internship. Okay. And so I talked to my professor and they pointed me to the corporate R&D center in Niskayuna. The General Electric has a
Yeah.
R&D center. So I went there with the intent to do a job to earn my summer internship so I can pay my parents,
Love it.
the air ticket.
Love it.
But then when I went there, I got to experience GE, the corporate
Mm,
R&D center were solving so many fascinating engineering problems. I got fascinated with it. They were solving very complex multi-physics
mm,
problems, aircraft
mm.
engines, they're making locomotives, they're doing medical products. I mean, all kinds of stuff. Okay. And if you are a true engineer, there is this like,
Yeah.
it's like for a kid giving a candy in a jar,
Yeah. Yeah.
So I enjoyed thoroughly. But then
Mm,
then I also, what happened was that I wanted to solve all kinds of problems, but my manager would allow me to solve only one kind of problem. Okay, because there are like lots of those problems also to solve.
mm.
So once you become an expert, I mean, this happens everywhere, right? So organizations want to extract more efficiency, and
Yes. They,
so he
yeah.
wanted me to solve, yeah, only one kind of problem very quickly because there are lots of those problems. But then I wanted to experience all different kinds of problems. And only
Yes.
way for me to solve all kinds of problems was to become a partner rather than continuing inside
Oh,
E. So I set up the business with only one intent, how to solve complex engineering problems that fascinated me, that draw my so that is the simple purpose why I started,
so
is to
you didn't get to solve enough diversity of problems, so you
that's right.
had to go and start your own company so you could figure out more interesting things.
Yeah, I mean, like when you are on your own, they don't have a choice but to, like I can pick and choose what I want to solve, right?
Sure.
So end of the month, if I had earned enough to pay my bills, I'm a happy guy. So my purpose was met. So I think that the
That's
core
interesting.
of the business, actually, the problem solving became the core. And in fact, today it also remains the same. Like we are very focused on every client's problem solving. I get my leadership team to solve the problem about like, the building the systems, so we are engineering the whole organization today with the intent to make it a generational company. So the problem solving mindset is very, very deep
It's
in the
deep.
organization. Yeah,
That is awesome. And obviously the firms that you support love that because you're helping them to achieve their, so you get to achieve your goals
that's right.
and the challenge, and then they get to get the results that they need. That's awesome.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, that's true.
So when you started doing it, and okay, so you could, now you get to solve more problems. At what point did you start to have large aspirations? Obviously, this didn't happen on its own. So what point did that start to happen?
That's a great question, Kevin. I think it was actually my aspiration got rebooted at the time of Enron bubble.
Hmm.
Up to that point in time, we were in the business for about 5 years. and we're about $20 million size. And then the Enron happened. That had a massive impact on GE, and GE stopped
Mm,
spending dollars on engineering at that point. So it had a direct impact on us. But then
mm.
I also wondered, hey, we didn't do anything wrong. I mean, like we were good engineers, but then
Right.
I was still suffering, and
Right. Right.
hey, why should I be suffering because somebody else messed it up, And then the whole thought process came about, hey, how do large organizations, who have survived for hundreds of years, how
Yep.
they must have gone through these kind of pains in their own lives, right? Either whether it's a wars or whether
Yep.
it's a technology change and all of those things. So then I became very, very curious about long-lasting businesses, and I came
Mm,
across a book from Arias Digos, and it's called The Living Company. And
mm.
that served initially as a little bit of a guidance for me, how to think about how to build a lasting organization. And then I got exposed to Jim's philosophies, which I resonated immediately as soon
Of
as I read
course.
books, it was like awesome. So I think like that, wanting to build a long-term company came in through that crisis when
Got it.
wondering about, how do these companies survive for so long? And then I
That is
developed my own hypothesis of, learning building those systems.
systems is to enable. Yep.
Exactly, yeah.
I love it. Crisis. So that's two crises that became big catalysts in your world. Needing to
Absolutely.
get your parents a plane ticket got you into GE and got you into problem solving.
That's right.
Not getting to do enough, starting your own, and then getting hit by the Enron scandal.
Yeah,
And then it's like, wait a second, we need to be bigger and enduring. I like it. I
that's
like it.
right. Yeah,
There's a say necessity is the mother of invention.
I agree.
And that's great. So paint a bit of a picture of what Quest looks like today, like as in, whether it's clients, the team, geography. Obviously, we know it's
Yeah.
large in scale in terms of it, kind of paint a picture for what that looks like.
Yeah, today we have close to 21,500 people around the world, and about 2,500 people are in North America, mostly in the US. And
Yep.
then another 2,500 engineers are in Europe, distributed across different countries, and 15,000 plus people are in Asia. Many of them are in India. And so that's our spread of people, and we have more than 2,000 open positions to fill as well.
2,000 open
Open
positions.
positions to fill, so
That's bigger than almost 99% of companies. But yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, we've been fortunate,
Wow.
So
Isn't that
and
scale? Isn't that scale wild when you sit and think about it? 2,000 open positions. That's awesome.
I think so. I mean, like it's like big lakes are formed by many droplets of rain, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so
I
it's
like it.
happening.
That's awesome.
And so we serve in 7 segments. So aerospace, defense, automotive, medical devices, power generation, oil and gas, and semiconductor, silicon engineering. That's one of our fields, and
Yep.
locomotive train systems. So we're into different segments. We work with top companies in each of these segments who produce these equipments, and we partner with them and figure out what are some of their latest challenges, and then how can we solve them, and then that's what is leading to our growth.
That is awesome. That's awesome. So speaking of growth, when you look back and you've grown, you've doubled and then doubled and then doubled and then doubled and then doubled. What were the most impactful decisions you think that you've made looking back that led to that year-on-year growth? Like the ones that really, yeah, enabled that.
I think I think sometimes I wonder about all the events, what lead you to get to the where you are. But
Hmm.
one thing I can tell you certainly is making the learning, building the systems as the primary focus of the organization, the leadership
Hmm.
is a big one. So I think like we resisted the temptation to follow everybody's path, and everybody's path meaning, hey, what is the quarterly numbers? What is how many clients, the new clients did you sign up this quarter? So all of those kind of things, we consider a little bit more tactical. I think like the leadership level, we got to be thinking about, the longer term things. Of course, there has to be rigor in the business,
Sure.
but it is not the primary driver. It's more of a tactical more than the strategic.
Got it. So I got it. So the tactical is happening, but you had the leadership focusing more on strategic. And how would you do that? Like that's why I believe most companies don't grow,
That's
is
right.
they get caught up too tactically and they're
That's right.
not putting energy on the future strategic. So they're focused on trying to operationally do well today
Yeah.
versus growing and winning in the future.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how did you do that?
I think it requires constant reinforcement to the people. I mean, like I always said this to the team, uh, business needs a profit to operate, and a profit is more like oxygen needed for the body to survive. But the purpose
Yep.
of a life is not to breathe. Life is something
Mm,
beyond. So you really have to ask the
mm,
question, what is it? Okay. Yes, profit has to happen, but that's not the primary purpose. So I think like having that leads to then the next question about like having right-minded people in the team who
yep.
think that same way, right? So how do you bring a leadership team, who are thinking that long term and then figuring it out how they can build their own legacies, building the systems that can perpetuate,
Mm,
long after they're gone. So I've been very, very fortunate to bump into people who have that same passion, or who
mm.
see themselves something beyond, day to day. So I would say that makes a lot of difference.
That makes sense. So if you look at the people you've worked and you have thousands of different people and you've probably worked with hundreds of different leaders and executives. What are the things that you've learned about the getting those right people and having them thrive in your organization?
Yeah, we have boiled it down to three aspects in the organization when we look for leaders. One is like
Yeah.
individuals to be highly aspirational. They need to be dreamers. They need to
Mm,
think longer term. The people who don't need any motivation, so they're
yes.
motivated, right? So I think like having aspirational element is one. Second one is the hunger to execute. So I think like people who are resourceful, they roll up their sleeves to get the job done.
Yep.
They think like they have the founder's mentality in a way.
Mm,
And third one is being humble. I think the humility, because we don't
yeah.
have all the answers. We mess up things. So ability to say to the rest of the team, hey, I made a mistake here, but this is my learning, and then have a discussion around it so everybody else has a result, has a benefit of that learning, so the people don't make that same mistake again.
Yeah.
So we look for those the people with that value system ingrained in them. I have been very, very fortunate to find such individuals, and I feel that's one of the elements, I would say.
Mm. What are the indicators to you when people have those three attributes? Like, what is it that you notice or you kind of rely on to get a sense of whether they fit that or they don't? Because people will tell
I,
you all kinds of things. You've
I,
got to have
I,
a,
no, I agree. I mean, like the success ratio up until now has been 1 in 3.
yep.
Even all my diligence of
Yeah.
finding
Okay.
the right people. So it's like it's not perfect science, that people, because many people are good in saying things, but then who actually feels it, you really don't know until you get to work with them for
Yes.
a while, right? So I think like the some of the lead indicators are individuals background, where they came from, did they had a rough childhood or whatever, like they had to rough and tough situations, and how much they put education as an emphasis during the interview stages, are they willing to share very openly their mistakes, things that they have suffered,
Yes.
whatever it is, and then I think you get that sense. But then again, as I said, you have to really work with the people to get to know what is coming from the mouth and what is coming from the heart.
Yeah, I
And
like that.
yeah,
What comes from the mouth or what comes from the heart. That's true because a lot of people are really good at making things come out of their mouth.
that's
But
right.
but you know, you'll find out in time if it's in their heart. That's interesting. So,
Yeah.
and what is your approach just on that people piece? When you know that someone is not one of those the 1 in 3 who are the right fit. How do you what is your philosophy or approach on it when you know this is not going to be the right person?
Yeah, well, I mean, like I have again adopted Jim's approach of double hump approach, hire fast, experiment, be fair, give direct inputs, and then if things are not working out, let them go on to find other
Yeah,
place where they can flourish. This
yeah,
is not the right place for them. So I believe in that, give them very straight feedbacks and then
yes, good.
see whether they can change. And surprisingly, some individuals I have seen change very rapidly because
Yeah,
they're very passionate about the culture. They love the culture, but then they have to make some changes in their own behaviors and
yeah.
them do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and unless you give them that straight feedback, then you don't know, and then it'll show itself very quickly. Good.
That's right.
So let's go to a strategy. And how how has your strategy either stayed the same or changed over the years as you've grown?
Well, the main strategy hasn't changed, Kevin. So I kept it the
Hmm.
same. Okay, so no changes, and that is, of course, we have kept it at a very high level, which is, we pursue to become most respected, recognized service provider to our client. So client is in the center of our strategy,
Yep.
and
Yep.
we have not changed that. So we have not changed our organization structure to chase the new technologies, or like start chasing like thousands of clients.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't do that. Okay, so we have like we select few clients and then we introduce a leadership team which is dedicated to that client, and then and
Mm.
those client partners, what do we call them, are responsible for bringing everything the company has to serve that client.
Ah,
So the voice of the client has dictated how we have grown the
love
business.
it.
And that strategy has remained same and it'll remain for a very long time. I don't think we need to make a whole lot of changes. We just have to get good at being current with the times because our clients
Yep.
change, their situations changes, their technology needs changes, tools change, everything constantly changing. But the very fact that they are going to be engineering products for 100 years, our job is to be relevant to them, being ahead of our competitors, bringing solutions.
That
So,
makes sense.
sort
And
of
if you
is.
can keeping that focus on, which is that's easy to say, it's often hard to do,
That's
where
right.
people lose track of the client, what they need, and they start thinking internally too much.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So I think like
Oh,
there are many mechanisms we have developed, that allows us to stay focused. They get measured on number of ideas that they have shared with the client, how we can
oh,
bring
really?
about functional change. Yeah. So this is more than I would say, hey, quarterly number, whether you hit or miss. We measure ourselves on, okay, hey, how what ideas did you take to the client? Does it have depth? What do they think? What are some of the problems they have that they have shared it with you? So this kind of dialogue internally
That's
allows us to
interesting.
know, yeah. So who
And
is
that also ties back to your learning piece. If we're constantly learning and have this system to learn, and then
right?
it's similar to taking ideas and things to that's it. I like that.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that has remained the same. What has changed is obviously because of the scale, and especially after COVID, we have pretty much doubled our size with a lot of influx of leaders and hiring
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
people and everything, So then all of a sudden now we are tasked with the challenge of, how do we imbibe our culture, our values, and then help people coming in mass,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think how do we identify the leaders with the potential within our system? So I think a lot of emphasis I'm putting on learning how to build a next generation of leaders in the company at this point.
And what's your biggest insight on that at this point of building the next generation?
Well, I mean, like We know the age-old truth that the first generation creates, second generation maintains, third generation destroys. Okay, and this is like a universal across multiple
Yep.
regions, and so and obviously, I my hypothesis is the reason why that happens is a sense of entitlement that sets in the organization. People no
Yep.
longer have the same hunger, they don't have the
Yep.
same level of intensity. And so I think the key, in my opinion, is to find individuals, leaders who act as a first generation leaders, every generation.
Mm. Oh, I like that.
Yeah. So I think it's like inverting the problem. So rather than thinking that you are a 28-year-old company, think that you are a startup today, or like look for leaders with that behavior where they are,
Like that. Yeah,
uh,
no, you can because you can see those ones. You can see those ones. They are acting like this is a startup, like this is the most important thing,
that's
and
right.
like they have to do everything possible to make sure they succeed.
That's right. That's right. I think identifying those individuals who have that bias, and then making sure that they are given the right empowerment, they're not every time they want to do something, restricting them from not doing it, I think is key. So put the
I like
people
it.
have that entrepreneurial mind, in the
Yeah,
leadership.
because I remember one of my friends when he joined another company and he came in with that mentality. And they're like, the old guy, slow down, son. Take it easy. You're making us look bad.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Like they
yeah,
were almost squashing him because he
yeah,
had the desire and the fire and all of those things. And you're almost trying to create a culture that's the opposite. It
yeah,
sees those people and lifts those ones up.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, and
That is a
you will find such people, like there are individuals who try to comply. Most of the leaders, try to comply with the system, but there are some individuals who break the system. Like I can give an example.
yeah.
Like let's say you need a computers to get some of the new hires going, okay, and then the internal process may take like okay a month to get that. So as a leader, you can go in and take your credit card and buy a computer and then get the guy going, and then get paid, for computer, right? So in a system, sometimes you come up with these kind of individuals who ask for forgiveness, then the permission,
Mm.
and I think like you have to have a system that allows to sniff out such individuals, and
So
they are.
you like those people.
I like those people. Yeah, the change.
And what happens when the IT guy goes, but wait a second, he went outside the policy, he went outside it's the balancing of the entrepreneurial and the system, right?
Yeah, that's the key. Like making sure that internally organization knows who are our the frontline leaders that have the empowerment, who are serving internally. I think that needs to be very clear,
I like
and
that.
yeah,
The entrepreneur in me loves that
that's a
because when we have this another company where we did a startup within an established business,
yeah,
and the startup is now in almost the size that your business is, right?
yeah,
It's gone to the moon.
hmm
But the piece of it is that we ended up having to do that.
hmm
We had people that were taking their credit card and buying software subscriptions and things because the
yeah,
corporate IT wouldn't approve it, and they
yeah,
wouldn't, and so they just went and did it,
yeah,
and that creates a lot of tension, but it's healthy.
yeah, agree, yeah,
I love it. Okay. So of the strategic tools that you use, back to strategy bit, what are the strategic tools? I know you're a great student of Collins and lots of other things. Like you continue to learn tons. What
yeah.
would be the strategic tools that as a growth CEO have helped you or currently help you the most?
Yeah, I on the strategic tools, we have developed this internal system called QGS, Quest Global System, which has this 5-year planning cycle, which sets that aspirational tone about like what are the things that we want to learn, what do we want to be famous for
Yep.
each one of the industry verticals, but then also learning the new system that we need to put in place to build a 100-year
Mm,
company.
mm.
So that mechanism has worked beautifully for the organization over the last 25 years. So we take one lesson every 5 years to learn. Okay. this way. It will feel a little bit odd to people. But what I have learned is like, if you focus on one thing, you do really, you think deep, you experiment properly, you understand the principles, what leads to learning that, that objective very, very clearly,
Mm.
rather than just saying, okay, we had like annual plan, we did it. I think learning takes time. So we have
So
done
did
that
you say one lesson every 5 years?
every 5 years. Yeah. So
Okay, you got to give
well,
and you can give an example of a historical one. It doesn't need to be the current one. Give
yeah,
an example, and it does take time to make things change and learn in a business. I know, but I'm super curious.
I think so. Yeah. I think like individuals learn. I'll just give you a little bit of background for it, right? So
Sure.
individuals learn very fast. Okay. And
Yep.
a team, for a team to learn, it takes a little bit longer because there are like multiple people are involved,
Yep.
right? But then if you have to learn as a company, then that learning has to get into the process of the organization, because that's true
Mm,
learning. So that takes
yes.
much
Right.
longer. Okay. And so the people who are operating in the system, if they are changing, then it's even harder, right? So to
Because you gotta.
really, yes. So I think that is the reason why you cannot have multiple learnings going on at the same time. You got to learn one thing at a time. And this is what I learned when I was doing my PhD, is about like how to solve a problem, truncate the problem into solvable problems, go deep, and then you figure out how the whole system comes together. So I think business we have done that. One problem, and this problem I'll give an example. So between 2010 and 2015, we wanted to learn how to acquire and integrate businesses successfully in the organization. Okay. So first 2 years we experimented acquiring a small company, big company, a company which is not making profit. I mean, various situations, the companies. Okay. And then we started extracting,
That is
what are
brilliant.
the 2, 3 principles that works for all these situations, and we have those answers. And now that has become like a part of our process of deciding, and then the coaching the people, saying, hey,
Right.
do these 3 things, then it works. And so with that, now we have done 17 acquisitions. I don't spend a whole lot of time anymore in
Right.
deciding.
Because it's in the DNA of the organization now. You programmed it into the DNA.
It doesn't mean that we don't learn anything new, but there is a process to
I, I,
incorporate learning as
Ajit,
well.
I was just writing this morning a blog about what I've learned in 20 years of using scaling up and Rockefeller habits. And
Yeah.
this is one of my points. I put 3 years, you've got
Mhm.
5, but that
Mhm.
it takes at least 3 years to build a new discipline into a company. 3.
That's
And
right. Yeah.
and one of our clients, they had a situation and they're about 1,000 employees, and they needed to get the whole team to be hyper responsive to customer inquiries, i.e.,
Yeah.
respond within a few hours.
That's
And
right.
it
Yeah.
took 3 years to build that discipline into the system. And it should be easy, but it's not. And
It's
it's
not.
it's
Not. Yeah.
it's surprising, but as you're saying, you've got to wire it into the systems and essentially get it in the DNA.
That's right. Yeah.
Uh,
I think like any
and
skills,
but
even
this is
in
because you think like 100 years. See, the reason you have this thinking is you're thinking because
order of thinking.
most people are just trying to get the financials next quarter.
That's right.
And this is what I love about enduring thinking. Because you're thinking about 100 years, you can do these 5-year layers of greatness.
That's right.
That
Yeah.
is awesome.
Yeah.
That's why I love enduring great companies and Collins's research. And
Yeah.
it just, when you think long term, it creates different, it opens your mind to different ways of thinking.
That's right. Yeah.
That
Order
is,
of thinking matters. Yeah. So I think so.
I,
A strategic tool, I would say, that our whole system has been built like that, 5 years, and then we have annual planning, we have annual departmental assessments,
mhm,
various things we have, in the culture.
I got it. And how does that 5-year goal fit in with within your annual planning? How do those two things relate? That 5-year
They,
learning objective, yeah.
yeah, well, I mean, the 5 is like that's like a North Star, Hey,
Yep,
what we want to do, that's like very aspirational in nature, and then we
yep,
let people, who aspire to do great things, we let them free float. Okay, pursue whatever you need to do. But the annual goals, on the other hand, are a lot more realistic. That's based on the realities that we have today, the brutal facts, facing the brutal facts, right?
yep.
So some industry verticals will not be going as great, and other ones are going gangbusters. So we kind of morph it depending on the situation, what's happening, so that
Yeah, and
people
more tactical, like you were
are.
saying before.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
That is awesome. That is, I just, that 5 year learning, I'm just thinking about that, and I can see that in other organizations that have done it. I can also see organizations that have missed, that don't have that, and then they
Mm,
just keep running on the same treadmill.
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so in terms of lessons and kind of things, if you would just think back to, when you started almost
Yeah.
30 years ago to now, what are the two biggest things that have been the most interesting lessons or surprising lessons for you in this journey?
Yeah. I think surprising, I mean, like staying course, I think is very hard.
Yeah.
And ability to stay course requires a very solid, committed, leadership team and who believe in that longer term thing, right? So I think finding those individuals is very, very important.
Yep.
And so the order of thinking, is you start with the end goal in mind, and then people can begin the journey, right? So I think that allows people to stay course. So that's one, is order of thinking matters. Second one is the leadership team itself. I think like you have to treat it like a family, in my opinion.
Mm,
And a business is more like a business family, right? So you have to be careful.
yes.
You have to care for them, their success and their pains and everything, so that they are also committed for the longer term,
Yep.
and I think it doesn't mean that you're soft, mushy mushy, like you have to be demanding. Everybody
Yeah.
has to stretch. Uh,
Sure.
but at the same time, you also recognize that, if somebody is on their knees, you don't kick them, you stretch your hand
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
them up, I think that that having that bonding matters a
Yeah.
lot. Relationship should always come first. Uh,
Yep. Yeah, and that applies to teams at all levels of the company, right? When the leader is connected with people like that.
that's right.
Okay, so a couple of quick questions. Most valuable advice that you think you've ever been given?
I think I've had a amazing set of mentors all through my life, and I seek mentors. So whether it is you included, right? So you talk about things, and so I've seeked. I've been very, very fortunate to have access to great minds. So Jim Collins's philosophy has always been my
Mm-hmm.
Bible, so to speak. For growing the company. So I think the early on, my mother's guidance probably has shaped me and the company
Mm.
enormously. So growing up in Asia, so the emphasis is always on the education,
Oh
so
yeah. Big
education
time. Yeah.
first, right? And so she had emphasized, this notion of, pursue the knowledge, value will follow.
Mm.
And so the pursuit of knowledge itself is the primary driver, I would say, so that has become the, like how it has manifested is, solving the problem of the client, building the clock. I mean, all of these are problem solving, right? So it's like a pursuit
Yes.
of the knowledge, but that has resulted into tremendous value. Whatever I've been able to do primarily comes from that mindset of problem solving.
Yeah. I can hear it. Everything in this conversation ties back into that. I can, yeah,
Right. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
awesome. And then,
Yeah.
so your mom had a big impact on you. Um, is there anyone else that has really had a big impact on you when you think back over the years?
I think like Jim Collins is right up certainly has
Yeah.
been my biggest driver, I would say, and other than that, of course, I've come across lots of research, and I consider every one of the authors as my teachers. Okay.
Yes.
So when I put that lens together, so I think like, Adam Grant, who has
Yep.
written about organizational, development, and Jack Welch has had an impact. The long-lasting companies, that have been built.
Yeah.
So, Ray Dalio is another one, Warren Buffett. I mean,
Yep.
they're all like intellectually very bright, capable people. So you tend to, pay attention to what they have to say.
Yeah,
So
well, on that for sure. So like if you look back at, and you've named a number of different, authors and books, but if you said there was three books that any entrepreneur that wants to build a company like you have and in that direction, what three books would be your top three you'd recommend?
I think the first one is obviously Jim Collins's four books. I
Yep,
think they're a must do because he has spent his lifetime studying the businesses which have
yep,
lasted, right? And he articulates it beautifully. So I would definitely encourage, reading Jim's books, Good to Great, Built to Last, Grow by Design, Choice, and
yep,
How the Mighty Fall. I think it has
yep.
all the nuances involved. So I think it does a great job. That's what I would say. And the second one I would say also is like, leaders to have a balance in their life. And this is something that I've learned over a period of time. Uh,
We
maybe
all
it has something to do with it, but I think like bringing a little bit more balance into life is important. Don't just chase the purpose or, bring some balance. So I would say Ichigo Ichie and Ikigai, couple of books that are written out there. I think they're really solid. So I would encourage people to read that. And the final one, which I think is relevant in our today's time, is by James Barat, Our Final Invention. So
I don't know that one. What's that one
yeah,
about?
this is on AI and how it's going to have impact on our society and how we live. And I think it's really what it's very provocative a little bit, but I think it's very apt for today's times because the next 20 years, I think the world is gonna experience a whole lot of change driven through the inventions, happening due to the artificial intelligence, super intelligence, and everything.
Hmm.
Has a massive impact on how we will live. So the CEOs of all the corporations should be aware of, the
Yes.
implications of that. So I would say those are the three things.
That's great. As we're recording this, I'm sending a note out to all of our CEOs that we work with today. And one of
Mhm.
the ones, it's a bit about some AI things I'm seeing. I don't have the answers, but there's another book called The Experimentation Thing by I think it's Jeff Busgang, who's a
Mhm.
Harvard professor. And it's about the AI startup mentality and operating system
Mhm.
and understanding what that is, so you'll also know what your new competitors will be like.
Mhm.
To be able to see, and it's very different than enduring companies that have been around for a while. So there's lots. That'll be an area of learning for all of us over the next 5-10 years. Yeah,
Yeah, agree.
awesome.
Yeah.
uh One more question on that. What advice would you give people as an external service provider slash consulting type firm? What advice would you give to CEOs as they grow on leveraging the use of externals that would be consultants like we do, consultants like you are in a different way, or just other experts? What's your insight about leveraging external capabilities like that?
Um, I'm a big fan of that, actually to leverage the capable people, whether it is clients, retirees,
Mm-hmm.
or consultants who have industry knowledge, bringing them in and then learning from them. Because we don't have all the answers ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
People who have seen the world, they can give us their intellect and knowledge. And then you have an opportunity to figure out whether it is applicable to you or not.
Yes.
Even better is what I have found out is that you state the problem that you have and then seek from people. Hey, I have this problem of now, for example, leadership, right? So I'm kind of wondering about leadership, how to coach people, how to develop. I have lots of questions, and then I make this as a part of the dialogue with the people that I interact with. And then, you know what? They point you towards the people who have had similar challenges or like they have experienced it and whatever their wisdom. You learn a lot by just posing your problems. So I think like being humble, expressing your problems, allows the people to share. So that's number one. Second one also, I think, reading a book a month or a week or every 2 weeks is the greatest way, in my opinion,
Yeah.
to learn because individuals would have spent their entire lifetime to learn something
Yeah.
and document what their learning is. Why not benefit from that learning, right? So I think like making it a habit dramatically
Yeah.
contributes to one's ability to think and evolve.
It seems to be the most successful founder CEOs like yourself that we know all will be on that learning piece, constant talking to other people externally and learning and reading like that. Because you're reading the executive summary of someone's wisdom of their life.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm going back to your 5 year, what is, solving that piece and everything. It all triangulates. So, okay, last couple questions and we'll wrap up. So, how do you
Mhm.
see Quest evolving in the next decade? So you've done lots so far. What does it look like?
Yeah. Well, today, our billion-dollar business has been built with about 20 business units serving these large-scale clients. And one job is to pretty much take that 20 to 100 over the next decade. Okay, so we
Ah,
are building these business units, and already we have like another 40 of those units getting built, but they're small in nature today, and
yeah.
they're led by these individuals with the founders mentality. So we're kind of nurturing them, giving them the opportunity.
Mm,
Something great, So that is what's going to happen is to just pretty much scale with what we know. And second one is we are investing heavily in innovation ourselves to
sure.
build the next generation technology and solutions that are relevant to our clients. So I'm amplifying that in the organization. This is like a building a new clock for the organization. So while the existing
Mm,
business model will continue to scale, but then also we want to build a third machinery, to build. So that's the primary thing what's going to happen. And next 2 decades are probably, it's like an engineering renaissance. We
yeah, I
like
bet.
every technology company is going to be investing massively to reconfigure their whole product portfolio by using AI engines, making them more intelligent, because society is going to continue to evolve very rapidly due to the 5G communication, and AI. So we are supremely positioned today to play in that game of
Yeah,
clients. So I'm super excited about what is to come for our company.
good. So last two questions. So where will you spend most of your time in the next 5 years? Where will you, not physically, but what will you be working on, thinking on, and doing mostly with your time?
Leadership building. So last 28 years, I have spent a whole lot of time learning.
Yes.
Okay, so maybe I learned 50%, but I've spent a whole lot of time learning. So now
Yeah.
it's all about grooming the next generation of leaders. So I'm going to be spending a inordinate amount of time in that, and how to retain that founder's mentality generation after
I love
generation,
it.
how to seek the individuals, at what stage we have to bring them, identify, what makes people tick over time. So I think that a lot of learning is involved. So I was telling my wife this morning, hey, one thing I know for sure is that I'm a good learner, but I don't know if I'm a good teacher. Okay, so now I need to learn how to teach. So I'm going to be speaking with many of the professors and teachers and
Good.
coaches, how to be a good coach, So there are a lot of institutional knowledge exist that need to be passed on to the next generation, but we want to do it in a very effective way. So I'm going to spend a lot
Yes.
of time on that. Yeah.
Well, one of the best pieces of advice I've been giving, I've received lots, but one of them around that is to make sure that you just point people to big challenging things by
Yeah.
which they will be forced to learn,
Uh-huh.
right? Which is in the culture of your company already.
Yeah. Yeah.
But going back to the necessity is the mother of invention. But we got to make sure we hook them up to those big challenges, and many of the great ones they will seek it themselves.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
And
It
there's
is
lots of
something
other
like
mechanisms.
I have approached the, like at least the coaching, I want to approach it. At least my initial bias is towards like a Socratic approach,
Yep.
state the problem and let the people figure out,
Yeah.
what sense, and they'll figure it out. Yeah.
That is one of the simple things, and I've seen others do it, but that's a whole other conversation. So final thing is, and this has been great. And again, congratulations on what you've built, although we know in many ways it's just begun. What
Yeah.
advice, if you were to give one, two things of advice to other CEOs that are on your same path and wanting to continue to scale for the long term, what thoughts would you leave them with, or questions would you leave them with?
Well, like what has worked for me is about that order of thinking. Start with the end goal in mind, and then you work backwards. So I have a very long-term view.
Yep.
Don't get saddled by the short-term views. That's not the best way to live life. I think broader, longer term. That's number one. And number two is, I think, leaders, as leaders, we have, and this is a concept that I came across in Japan. It's called Sanpo Yoshi. And Sanpo Yoshi, it directly translates in it. What it means is three ways. Okay. And three ways are three constituent of a business. Is you have a client that you serve, and then you have employees that work for you, and then you have shareholders. Okay. And these are like the three constituents. So you as a leader has to take yourself out of the equation completely. It's like more like a selfless act in a way. And you think about the system and how to build a system that creates value to all those three constituents. And I
I
think
like that.
leaders, if they are able to extricate themselves from themselves being in the center, or like playing to the only one constituent, so you have to keep in mind all the three, and with a larger purpose, like the community that we want to make a difference at the end of the day. So if the leaders, CEOs have that bias to build a system that can make a difference,
Yeah.
then
A system without them, a system that doesn't include them.
absolutely, yeah. Because end of the day, leadership, the quality of the leadership is based on not what happens while you are at the helm. It is what happens after you're done,
Yeah.
right? So tomorrow I will pass it on to my next generation. My children will also be involved in some way in the company. My leaders will be involved. And then as you get older, your joy will come from seeing how your system is performing, what you have built.
Yes.
That is wonderful to see it. We expect that in our own lives with our children, don't we? We want our children
Yeah.
to have a better life
Yes.
than us. That's what gives us the joy. So it should apply the same principle for the business as well. Business is a family, the team, people that work for you, you must genuinely care and build that, So that's what I would say CEOs have to do.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love the family metaphor, and it's the same thing. We're instilling it into our children to have them thrive without us and be
Yeah.
independent and autonomous. And the same thing with a company. If you're a systems thinker, clock builder who wants to build something for 100 years or more.
That's right. Yeah.
Awesome. Ajit, that was a spectacular conversation. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your insights. And my main takeaway is that 5-year focus on what do we need to learn and master in a 5-year period, and that becoming permanently layered into the DNA of the company. And then we go put in the next piece.
That's right. You got it.
Awesome.
Thank
Wonderful.
Thank you for this opportunity, Kevin.
Yes.
All
Thank
right.
you too.
Thank you. All right. You take care.
All the best. Thank you.
Yes.